you're new to my channel, welcome, and if you've been here before, welcome back. The purpose of this video is to compare and contrast and hopefully come to an understanding. I really do hope that you enjoy the video. I'm not gonna beg you to subscribe, but dropping a like helps out the channel tremendously. The first baby boomer was born on January 1st, 1946. The little guy or gal had no idea the promising circumstances that they were just born into. The people of this generation are called baby boomers because of the significant increase in childbirths following World War II. From 1946 to 1964, in the United States alone, over 76 million baby boomers were born. The colossal size of the baby boom set a cultural expectation that this would guarantee future prosperity. This economic boom, which saw wages rise by 60%, created a stable environment that encouraged soldiers to start families, which helped fuel the baby boom. Now let's talk about the boomers' children and even grandchildren. The generation born between 1997 to 2012 are also known as digital natives because fortunately, but at the same time, unfortunately, we grew up with the internet and social media heavily integrated into our everyday lives. The name Gen Z is an alphabetical continuation of the naming process that went into Gen X and Gen Y, aka the millennials. The nickname Zoomer is a more informal term that gained traction due to its use in online memes and the rise of video conferencing apps like Zoom during the panoramic. Although it would have been more fitting if we used Uvu or Skype. I've literally never heard anyone talk about Zoom until it was time for us to learn online.
Well, Gen Z is pissed at us boomers, and I can't say that I blame them. There was an article that came out the other day that said you would have to have 5 minimum wage jobs to live in Austin, Texas, to afford the rent there. It's ridiculous. So those of you who say, well, back in 1980, I made $15 an hour and I bought a house. Well, guess what? Adjusted for inflation, your $15 an hour that you made in 1980 would now be over $112,000 a year. You know, most young people I meet, they want to work. A lot of people say, oh, the new generation doesn't want to work and they're lazy. No, that's not true. They're smart. They're smarter than us. They just don't want your crappy $15 an hour job. Now, I'm not here to give any answers, but I'm just saying, I feel you, Gen Z. On the other hand, that one young kid who told me yesterday and commented that I shouldn't be on TikTok, get off my lawn, you little
The chasm between the baby boomer and Generation Z experience is a frequent topic of public discussion, usually framed in conflict and blame of people who are old enough to be our grandparents. However, a deeper dive reveals a series of profound and distinct societal transformations. By comparing and contrasting the formative years and adult realities of these two generations, a clearer understanding arises of how one generation's journey, shaped by post-war prosperity and cultural revolution, laid the foundation for the challenges faced by the generations to come. There's a common belief from outside generations that boomers had it easy, but depending on who you ask, they may tell you that growing up wasn't peaches and cream and they actually lived a life of hardship. So why the discourse? Boomers prioritized permanence, routine, and material stability. The boomers' parents grew up during the Depression, then lived through the trauma of World War II. They reached the 50s and the economy was booming. New prosperity was afoot. Life in the suburbs was good, allowing parents to fully focus on their family and children. The baby boomer children were spoiled with high expectations. They believed that life was about being free and happy and carried this expectation into their adult life.
We found out in the 50s that if you got up in the morning and went to work and did a good day's work, that things got better. You got promoted or you got more money, you were able to buy furniture, you could have more children, the children could have better clothes, and life just improved.
The adults knew this was from going to work, but maybe the boomer children did not realize that this was because their parents were working so hard. The boomers' parents were fueled by fear and wanted to live vicariously through their children and heal their own childhood traumas and anxieties by raising their kids to become the perfect child. Parents looked for professional help to ensure that their dreams become a reality. Benjamin Spock, MD, wrote The Common Sense Book of Baby and Child Care. Over 500,000 copies were sold in just 6 months. His book was outsold by only the Holy Bible. His philosophy emphasized the permission to be flexible, coupled with the importance of prioritizing emotional and personal well-being of the child, instead of the strict disciplinary model the silent and greatest generation experienced. Many parents comprehended his teachings as permissiveness and the right to relinquish their authority and replace it with the pursuit of material goods. In essence, they treated their children like adults. Spock MD warned that if parents used too much discipline, it could lead to future years of emotional damage.
I used to tell parents who worried about that war pistols and war toys would make their children gangsters or militarists. I used to poo-poo that, but I really changed my mind to some degree. I don't think you can change a good child to a scoundrel by letting him play with pistols. One of the people who changed my mind was a nursery school teacher that I respect very much, and she said that after the Three Stooges program became popular, that nursery school children began bopping each other quite spontaneously. And she would say, "You can't do that. He didn't do anything to you." And they said, "The Three Stooges do." To be serious about it, it made me realize that by watching brutality or by watching pseudo-brutality, children's ideas of what is proper, what's acceptable, really can be changed, at least to a degree. Now, my own feeling is that with the world in the precarious state it is in, with nuclear destruction just around the corner, that we've got to bring up our children much more civilized and much more constrained about the use of aggressiveness, so that my own feeling is now children shouldn't watch brutality or even pseudo-brutality, especially when they're at the preschool age.
To outsiders, American kids appeared spoiled, superficially self-assured, and materialistic. It seemed as though they only cared about having fun and viewed love as just another materialistic gift. Teachers were then encouraged to use the classroom to promote conformity and reject individualism. They would teach classes of 35 to 60 children for 2 hours a day. Then they would have another class come in, then another, and another. Because they were so outnumbered, teachers spent more time disciplining and maintaining order in the classroom, which meant that not every kid could get the attention that they needed.
The slow learners aren't getting the attention they need, and the bright ones are bored.
And it gets worse every day. But for the time being, we've got to live with it, doing the best job we can.
Even if it's a bad job?
All we can do for the present is try the best we know how.
Long-term planning was abandoned in favor of immediate political and economic gain. The children showed signs of deep anxieties and appeared to be in constant need of reassurance and security from their parents and teachers. Common fears were failing tests, their parents falling sick and/or unemployed. One could say that the baby boomers being coddled caused them to have this pervasive fear of life. Although this may be partially correct, their fears could have also been fueled by the looming threat of nuclear war, causing the generation to fear the thought of no future, leading to some of the youth no longer planning for marriage, children, or a career. Sadness, dread, anxiety, and hopelessness grew rampant, even though this generation was raised on a promise of future American prosperity. Adults saw that the children were struggling and set out to find solutions.
To leave no stone unturned in our self-examination, leaders traveled to Russia to look at their educational system, to see what they were doing that was different. What we found shocked us.
30 years ago, we had 6 times as many scientists and engineers as the Soviet Union. Now their colleges are turning out twice as many technical people this year as ours are.
In the Soviet time, the science was a priority in the society.
Take something like the Russian satellite to put the finger on what's wrong with our education.
We need scientists, we need technicians, we need mathematicians. There's no doubt about that.
We've come face to face with the realization that schools and survival are inseparable.
We got to do something, and we need an educated population science to be able to do this.
After borrowing ideas from the Soviet Union, American education was prioritized, mainly math, engineering, and science. Kids were encouraged to take physics, geometry, and chemistry. Baby boomers were educated as a defense toward other world powers. They, like their parents, now had purpose and a promise of success and prosperity. Baby boomers now had something to look forward to, something to live for. Young Americans wanted to beat the Russians. They wanted to be the first in space. They wanted to be smarter, and they didn't want to be intimidated by the impending doom of nuclear war and Russian technology that was improving.
I gathered in some friends that had been my friends all my whole life, and we decided we're going to form a club called the Big Creek Missile Agency, and we're going to build rockets. We had absolutely no clue on how to do this. We started to really research rockets. We read everything we possibly could. Our teacher, Miss Riley, got involved, and she got us a book called Principles of Guided Missile Design, which required a working knowledge of calculus and differential equations, and I was having trouble with algebra at the time. We blew up a lot of things. We dodged a lot of shrapnel. Ultimately, we ended up building professional-style rockets that were flying literally miles into the sky. We just felt someday what we were doing was going to help the United States to be #1 in space. We wanted our country to catch up with the Russians, and then we wanted to just keep on going forever.
The new law was called the National Defense Education Act. The name made clear the connection that everyone felt. Education was critical to our national defense.
Propaganda told young boys to follow in their father's footsteps so they'd accomplish what he had. Although unsurprisingly, seeing their fathers appear overly busy wasn't the best motivation for the young lads. Men were working late at night and getting up early in the morning. Fathers appeared to be exhausted and not mentally present when it was family time. Young men wanted to be dangerous and respected, not overworked and mentally absent.
My dad was always above board in all his business dealings. But I would say money and getting ahead and making a lot of bucks was his goal. And I think what it was Dad meant well. Dad wanted to love us, but Dad was so busy at work. He would work till 2, 3 in the morning doing artwork for the business. He'd get up early and be gone. I hardly ever saw him.
Young girls were fed propaganda about following in their mother's footsteps by homemaking, cooking, and cleaning. The young ladies were told that they're only able to find fulfillment as housewives and mothers. Even women who went to college often majored in domestic sciences. If women wanted to be professionals, they were limited to being a teacher, stewardess, nurse, secretary, and most importantly, a wife and mother living in the suburbs.
Educational films like this one reflect society's belief that women could find fulfillment only as housewives and mothers.
The song when I went to college at Smith College, which they don't sing anymore, I know, that had a verse that went something like this. You're sharp as a pinpoint, your grades are really 10-point. You are Dean's List Sophia Smith. But when a man wants a kiss kid, he doesn't want a quiz kid. Oh, you can't get a man with your brains, with your brains, with your brains. Oh, you can't get a man with your brains. And it had verses that went on and on. Now, I sang that in 1957 with a sense of how true it was and how funny it was. Now, of course, it makes a shiver run up and down my spine.
For a baby boomer, coming of age was defined by a landscape of unprecedented opportunity. The post-World War II economic boom provided a stable foundation, where higher education was a widely accessible and affordable path to a secure career. The baby boomer era was also a crucible of social change. The hippie movement was a major part of the 1960s counterculture. It was driven by a rejection of mainstream American life. The core point was to create a new way of living that prioritized peace, love, personal freedom, and nonconformity over the materialism, consumerism, and strict social norms of the previous generation. Hippies expressed these values through their unique fashion, long hair, communal living, and a deep interest in Eastern philosophies and psychedelic drugs as a means of seeking spiritual enlightenment and expanding consciousness. On university campuses, young baby boomers protested a wide range of issues, mainly the Vietnam War at the forefront. Boomers advocated for peace, opposed the draft and the U.S. government's involvement in the war. They also protested for free speech on campus, challenging university rules that restricted political activities. Other protests addressed civil rights for minorities and women's rights. with students demanding a more just and equal society. The emergence of musical acts like the Beatles from the UK also encouraged a spirit of rebellion and a rejection of conformity, giving boomers a sense of collective identity and a belief in their power to change the world. On the other hand, we have the Zoomers. There's a slight cognitive dissonance that comes along with growing up as a digital native. A lot of activities and places that seem nostalgic to us are literally places we've never even been, almost as if this was a shared dream we all convinced ourselves was real. But you're probably wondering, what's the point in even having this discussion? Why do we compare ourselves to the boomers? To some, it may seem ridiculous to compare our current circumstances to people who are old enough to be our grandparents. And I understand why one may find it peculiar, but this is how it's always been. How else can we measure the progress or lack thereof that society is making? Generations are broken up by the culture in which they were born into. Gen Z, for example, was born into the digital age, and for millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha, the boomers are our blueprint. They're a generation of people that we want to be like. The white picket fence, marrying young, living in the suburbs are all key aspects of the American dream that we are encouraged to strive for. Keep in mind that the comparison is not one-sided. Gen Z is jealous of the boomers and the opportunities they had, and the boomers think we're losers for not accomplishing what they did. Most would agree that what makes Gen Z unique is our birth into the digital age. Prior generations had to adapt to new technology, whereas most digital natives can't even remember a world without the internet, social media, and smartphones, which in turn has fundamentally changed how we communicate, learn, and consume media. The rise of certain platforms has made us highly visual communicators and has given us unprecedented access to diverse communities and global trends, some for better, some for worse. Plenty of us were still exceedingly young during the Great Recession of 2008, which had a profound impact on our families and our worldview. Witnessing our parents and older siblings struggle with job instability and financial insecurity has made us a more pragmatic and financially cautious generation. This has also influenced our view on choosing careers. Many Zoomers value job stability and seek alternative paths like side hustles and entrepreneurship. We are more likely to prioritize job stability and be cautious of debt. We've been a driving force behind the gig economy and other alternative career paths. Zoomers grew up in a low-trust society, which has also led us to be skeptical of traditional economic systems and institutions, opting for a more flexible and secure financial future. Gen Z has come of age in a time of significant global and domestic turbulence. The September 11th attacks were a formative event that ushered in an era of continuous global conflict and heightened national security. Have you ever watched television that depicted what air travel was like before and after that day? It's like day and night.
This was the birth of TSA.
Today we take permanent and aggressive steps to improve the security of our airways.
And the president made that call to roll out TSA. Never before had we rolled out that large of a federal agency in a short period of time.
Before TSA, airport security was private. It was ran by airports or even airlines, not the federal government.
For most of Gen Z, the attacks are more of a historical event rather than a lived memory. The oldest of us were only 3 to 4 years old. Although the attacks and the subsequent war on terror shaped the world we grew up in, we've lived our entire lives with never-ending discussions of national security and an increased awareness of global conflict, which has given us a more complex and nuanced view of the world, resulting in some of us questioning foreign policy and the role of the US on the global stage. It's also contributed to our general sense of anxiety and the overwhelming feeling of living in a world of constant uncertainty. I feel like I've seen this somewhere before. We've also grown up with the constant threat of mass shootings, especially in schools, stores, or anywhere that a lot of people gather. On top of this, the panoramic disrupted our education and social development, forcing us into a new reality of remote learning and social isolation during a critical developmental period. Our education was disrupted. Major life events for the youth, like proms and graduations, were postponed or completely canceled, and our in-person social interactions were completely limited. Just a show of hands, who here is still relearning how to communicate with others when they leave the house? Alright, now keep your hands raised if you can barely even remember what it was like to interact with people, strangers specifically, before the panoramic. As I've mentioned before, the global panoramic was of course 1,000 times harder on second and third world countries. But around the world, it contributed to a rise in mental health struggles, mainly anxiety and depression. The panoramic also highlighted systemic inequalities, which has further fueled Gen Z's passion for social justice and our willingness to challenge established institutions. Due to Zoomers developing in this current world of digital saturation and economic precarity, schooling is now characterized by the crushing burden of student debt, making a college degree a financial risk rather than a guaranteed investment. For many boomers, the traditional trajectory was a life of job hopping or a single lifelong career, often with a large pension and a clear path to home ownership. The economic policies of the 1980s was influenced by figures like Ronald Reagan, who shifted focus towards deregulation and free market principles, which, while boosting some sectors, also began to erode the traditional safety nets that had previously defined the American working experience. While some baby boomers made choices that defied tradition, the vast majority married, had children, and bought homes. Driven by a post-World War II economic boom and strong societal pressure, the boomers came of age in an era of unprecedented prosperity, where a single income could support a family and home ownership was a realistic goal. While some boomers chose not to marry or have children, their reasons were often rooted in a desire for individual fulfillment and a rejection of what they saw as the rigid social norms of their parents' generation. The rise of the sexual revolution in the 1960s and 70s was a rebellion against traditional views of sex and marriage, advocating for personal and sexual freedom. Fueled by the widespread availability of the birth control pill, this movement allowed women greater reproductive autonomy and helped usher in second-wave feminism. Fast forward to the present day. For many, the idea of getting married, having children, or even owning a home feels out of reach. The cost of raising a child to adulthood is a major deterrent. The concept of a father being able to support a family on his income alone is almost entirely a thing of the past, especially if he doesn't own a business, work a profitable trade, or isn't even college educated. Moreover, Gen Z is deeply concerned about climate change and social issues, leading some to question the ethics of bringing children into a world facing so many challenges. For the digital natives, personal freedom is less about rejecting social norms and more about navigating a world that doesn't offer the same economic stability and security as it did for our parents and grandparents. For Gen Z, the very idea of a single lifelong career seems like a fantasy. The promise of home ownership, marriage, and family life has become a distant dream for many, pushing us to seek multiple income streams and additional education simply to stay afloat in a competitive and unstable job market. Essentially, boomers had the choice to rebel and not conform to a traditional life. Whereas for Gen Z, it appears our only choice is to forget that this so-called traditional life was the American dream we were all promised. Gen Z is giving up due to rapidly increasing mental health problems, increased costs of living, distrust in institutions, evolving social norms, cultural and political conflict. Coming of age in Gen Z is arguably harder and more daunting than growing up as a millennial, Gen Xer, or baby boomer. It looks bleak. Why work when AI will take our jobs? Why work when I'm just making a greedy old rich guy richer and the taxes I pay are funding wars that I don't even approve of? Hey guys, so I just wanted to say thank you to you for watching the video all the way till the end. This video was supposed to be like 2 hours long, but I was like, that's going to take me way too long to put everything out. So I cut up the first chapter. Like that first 30 minutes that you just watched, about 30 minutes, is essentially the first chapter of a super long video, and I just wanted to get it out to you quicker. So if you want part 2, just show love in the comments. And the question that I would like for you to answer in the comments is, where do we as Gen Z go from here? What can we learn from the boomers' mistakes? Because I mean, I'm sure you've heard of the boomerification of Gen Z, and there's a lot of ways that we parallel the boomers, which is what I tried to outline in the video. And I just want to know where you think we can go from here. And if you're a boomer, a millennial, a Gen Xer watching this, You may have kids or friends who are Gen Z. What do you think we should do? But thanks again, and I hope to see you in the next one. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Drop a dislike if you didn't. Comment what you think, and subscribe if you want to see me again. I just wanted to show you my shirt really quick. Y'all see the fit? It says introvert. I don't know if it's backwards, but introverts unite. So I'll see you guys.